All right, are we live?
Yeah, it is loading up, but we're about there.
It says here meeting is now streaming on Facebook.
Okay. And we are live.
Great.
Okay. So we'll wait, see if anyone pops in for a bit. But I am Isabel Pardo. I am the program coordinator for the Aerogramme Center for Arts and Culture, and I'm here with Gabriel Soto, who is our current exhibiting artist.
Hello.
Yeah, we'll just give a couple minutes for people to jump in.
Yeah.
We're navigating the Zoom via Facebook. And I'm here with Gabriel Soto, who is our. This is very exciting to me. Yeah.
That's a lag right there.
No, that was me also opening Facebook. So bear with us while we figure out technology, but we're both very excited to have everyone here.
I'm trying to send directions to a friend because I'm too scared to open up a new tab or something.
Yeah, it's just on the Aerogramme Facebook page, so everyone should have access to it pretty simply.
Yeah. So if you go to the Aerogramme Arts page on Facebook, and you'll find the live video pretty good.
Yes.
All right, they found it.
Okay, so why don't we just jump in with everything then?
Let's jump it in. Let's start the intro.
Yeah. So hi again. If you didn't hear before, this is Behind the Studio. This is the first in a recurring series that we will be having at the Aerogramme Center for Arts and Culture with our exhibiting solo artists. My name is Isabel Pardo. I am the program coordinator. And this here is Gabriel Soto, who is our current exhibiting artist. So his show, Realms of Potentiality, is on view on our website, aerogramme.org, until April 9th. So if you haven't checked it out already, I definitely recommend that. We'll be seeing some of the works in the show and getting further insight on their processes and the behind the scenes of them. So how this is generally going to work, we're going to have Gabriel talk, and he's going to give a nice presentation about his work. Then I have some rapid questions for him. And then we'll take some questions from the audience. So I will introduce you, Gabriel, with your bio, and you can bring up your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Gabriel Soto is born in El Salvador. He is a painter with an interest in psychedelic imagery, history, and esoteric spiritual practices. He graduated from the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts with a BFA in 2017. Primarily focused on oil painting, Gabriel currently resides in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm sure you'll tell us about that shift in your life that's currently happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the floor is yours.
So thank you. Thank you for all of those stopping by and listening to our conversation. And of course, thank you, Isabel and Zoe, for pulling the effort to get this together. I want everybody to also go to the aerogramme.org website and check out the other artists on display. And let's get started. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and getting into the presentation here with going here, present. All right, so thank you all for coming, and this is Realms of Potentiality. This is my slideshow, and let's start going into the paintings that are in the show, and then we're gonna get into the rest of the processes of my studio practice. My paintings here are more of like an exercise in loosening up from a classical background and embracing more of a graphic aesthetic, instead more of an industrial style, instead of being heavily influenced by late 20th century painters in America and Europe. I wanted to depict figures in a non-classical way. I'm going to show you my classical drawings later in the presentation for contrast. But here I'm trying to depict them in ways that are not really seen in Western classical painting. And without really meaning to, I sort of like began to depict like people working in various jobs, tasks, etc., and becoming aware of the relationship between the one that works and the one that owns the profit in a way. But these were sort of meant to be like also diagrams of like my own thoughts on esotericism and mysticism. Um, like this one, which was an experimentation of just like seeing how I can make a picture represent sort of like an esoteric symbolic thing, but also experimenting with like the mixing of bright colors with oil paint and seeing what combinations make the best graphic impact or something like that. So it's an experiment on a lot of different levels here. Not a lot, mainly two. This was also a way to see like how can I juxtapose different images uh, that can have different meanings, and can create a narrative in a painting that it's somewhat more mysterious or less easy to understand. I kind of wanted that. I wanted this like nonsense narrative to happen in the painting, and I wanted to see how can I use an eclectic range of pictures to make it happen. And obviously, for me to sort of create allegories that are nonsensical and also sort of pointing to some esoteric symbolism that for me is meaningful. And what I'm looking for in these paintings is really to create a scene where the characters themselves in the painting, for example, this woman, where the characters in the paintings seem perfectly well aware of their surroundings and their scenarios and the settings they're in, while we don't have any idea what they're doing. For example, this woman, it seems like she's perfectly aware of what she's doing, filling out a grid, looking at a map, um, but we really don't know what it means. We sort of have to understand this painting through her own lens, and what her lens is, we don't really know. And I find that's what's I think more esoteric about it, more spiritual or more psychedelic about it, in which we are forced to face a reality that is not our own. It's the reality of the painting. So again, these scenarios of people uh, engaged in labor that we don't understand, labor that we have to sort of guess at, and sort of appreciate as something that is completely alien to us, but very familiar to the figures in them, as well as what they're saying. For example, this figure doing a little speech bubble to the top left. The form in a speech bubble is just a gargled shape, but somehow it feels like the figures are a mutual understanding of what is being said. And for my studio practice, the way it came about to doing what I do, it started to become mainly based on a growing collection of imagery that I would find online and then use as a resource for making paintings. So you can see here, for example, on the center, you have the fellow in the green uniform. I used that figure as a reference for my painting that I showed before. I didn't really get to paint that exact green. That is the green I wanted for my painting, but I wanted to, obviously I still need some more bright pigments for that. But basically, I'll combine different images on the canvas to create more interesting um, juxtapositions between them. So I'll find like these street signs, motel ads, motels in themselves, or some abstract structures, and I'll see like what eclectic mix of pictures I can use to create like visual interest in the image. I get them from like several websites that are mainly databases of like vintage imagery going back to like the 1900s. I stuck with mainly vintage imagery. I feel like that's sort of what I gravitated to, and I tend to like specifically like diagrams, posters, like photos from like the Soviet bloc in Eastern Europe and Russia, and like sci-fi illustrations as well. And you can see how those kind of influence what I paint. I only showed you a few, images, but like my general reference folder, which is where all my pictures are located in, is usually like a large folder. It's got over 1,000 items, and it still grows every day. I'm always looking for new pictures, and it's okay if I don't use most of them. I just like having them as a something to look at while I'm trying to come up with conceptual ideas for a painting. And the painting process for these paintings has been sort of a process that begins with one image here to start with. And the process is of painting new images on top of it until it reaches a state of completion. And it usually means it's a process of destroying the image. So as you see here, I started with the rather clean slate at first, and then I willfully scraped it. I added paint thinner to it, and I brushed it all over. The surface is now dirty. That frees me up to add more stuff to it. I flipped the painting on its head, and now added a tree here. I then created the legs of the person that was the original figure into some sort of visor. I added a figure underneath, but I kept the yellow. I flattened a few areas out, and after some more iterations, the painting ended up becoming what it is now. So it's not really like the goal is not really to correct the mistakes and create a perfect image in the classical sense, but rather involving every layer in the end result so that the painting feels like it has depth, or it has a texture, or it has a certain vibrance in the end, like the feeling that someone worked on it, someone put a lot of stress into the surface. Um, that's actually a term that we would use at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. The term was called tortured surface, in which the surface of the painting bears a lot of different processes in it, a lot of covering up, a lot of destroying, until you get to where you want. And here is a painting that is not on the show, but I'll run you through the process. This is a more recent painting, basically. So I started with this picture of this bleach bottles, two bleach bottles in a perspectival space. I scraped them, I destroyed them, I added yellow, then I flipped it around on its head, and then I added this map-looking structure that I found in a World War II propaganda poster. Then after that, I added a figure. The figure I didn't really like the figure there, so I turned the figure into a bellows of smoke, and I took newspaper and I then scraped all over the painting with the residue of the black paint, turned it into a very dirty surface. And then I added streaks of acrylic white on the top, and I turned the black into sort of a billowing smoke in the horizon, added some shrubbery. You can see on the right that the layer where the map was is sticking out, so you can still see it. And then I took advantage of that, and then I added a sort of military bunker using the outline of that layer. And then I added some street lights or electric pylons that would go to the horizon along with the shrubbery. I cleared up the smoke, and by adding white, but adding several layers of dirty white so that it feels like there's layers underneath layers. And then ultimately, I added a figure on top of the white, and then a sort of more abstracted street light. And I added a few more explosions, and that's what the painting ended up looking like. Which is this process is based off, more like abstract expressionist processes rather than a classical practice that I was taught, which is exemplified in my older work here. Because as you can see with these drawings, I was trained very classically in the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. These drawings were made right after my graduation, basically. I still didn't have much of an idea of what I wanted to do conceptually or materially. So I literally did what was natural to me, which was just painting figures rendered classically, drawing figures rendered classically in a traditional space. Then these begin to sort of reflect my move to Chicago. After moving here to the Midwest, I sort of started looking for something else, something more exciting. And I started to wonder, like, well, could I draw things in a way that's semi-classical, semi-abstract? And I started to sort of pay attention um, to other artists, other contemporary artists, and some post-war artists, which led to this drawing. And this one kind of reflects the start of the style that I embraced with the paintings that I have in the show. With this in this drawing, which was made in 2019, I was trying to see how to combine classical drawing techniques with more graphic flat elements in the composition. And this drawing, however, took me way too long. It took like 4 months, and when you consider that, that's like a third of a year. And if you're an artist, that's like not really like the output you want to be making. Um, I also spent like a lot of time doubting myself and not really enjoying the process. I did feel like I was just like keeping up with the classical aspect of the drawing just because I felt like I had to justify my bachelor's degree from my specific school. And and it just felt like I was just obsessing over these classical details rather than uh, creating an interesting image as a whole. So after this, I felt like I was willing to sacrifice the exactitude and the representational quality of the work that I have been taught to make in order to feel more liberated in my art making, which led me to like find more artistic influences. And if you look at my work and you look at the work of Neil Raux, you'll find that there's like a lot of like a correlation and a lot of like a lot of similarities, and that's because he's like one of the artists that influences me the most, particularly his color palette and his figurative style, where he shows sort of like post-war settings and figures from post-war posters or Cold War posters in his paintings. That's been a big inspiration to me. And but he's not the only one. Rose Wiley, a British painter, I really like her work as well. She has this way of painting figures in a really graphic, really loose way that I find really, really liberated. Usually depicting, excuse me, usually depicted scenes of people just walking about the sidewalk or going swimming or just standing around, but painted in a way that's really exquisite, really thick paint, really bright colors. I really enjoy that. She also uses the a collage technique in her paintings where you can't really see here because the paintings are too small, but if you were to see it in a larger image or in person, you would see that parts of her paintings are not painted on, but are rather a bit from another canvas that has been cut and then sewn into the canvas that you see here. And I really like that she's sort of pushing the idea of what a painting can be, and that using brushes and paints is not the only way to make a painting. So overall, like a great sense of texture and material and all that. We also have Hilma af Klimt, the 19th century abstract painter. From her, I sort of like get inspiration from the idea that art is the language that conveys a metaphysical world beyond our own, and that world isn't necessarily understandable. If you look at these paintings, you're not really going to understand much or any of it, but you're going to see that something is being referenced to by seeing like the 1, 2, 3 in the painting. So she's obviously numbering something. What it is, we don't know. What it, who's going to know what that means? Probably only Hilma. But I like that. I like that idea that she embodies with her work. That really the process of seeing art is engaging with mystery. You're not going to, you're not going to find any logical solution to anything through a painting. You're going to instead be confronted with the mystery itself. And then I have Sangra Majumdar. Mainly what I love about him is that he used to be a very realist painter, and he used to be a very tight painter. He used to make very accurate figures, accurate spaces directly from observation, very skilled. And then he began to become more abstracted and more abstracted to the point where he, went completely flat, completely abstract. And I just find the inspiration in him that, you can be like a very careful, methodical, observational painter, and then become through your process an abstract painter completely, and that there's a way to meet the opposites together in one painting practice. And with that ends my little presentation. I want you all, if you haven't already, to follow Aerogramme Arts on Facebook or Instagram. They have the same handle on both. And my Instagram handle is Gasso Art with the underscore in between. And thank you all for coming. We're going to open it for Q&A now. I'm going to stop my share.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, there we go. And that's
yeah,
it.
So everyone, I will be presenting my questions now, but put your questions in the comments and we'll make sure that we hit those at the end. But yeah, thank you again for sharing that presentation. I think what makes your work so strong, even though you're in such an exploratory part of it, is because you're taking this like very familiar space and like completely like almost starting to go down into the uncanny valley and like play with that a little bit. But yeah, I also like when you're talking about the metaphysical and esoteric, but you're really like, you're almost practicing a form of alchemy. Like you're destroying so you can create. So that's really fun. And I love to see that whole process of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's jump right into all of our questions. So I have 15 questions for you. Let's see what your answers are. So first, what do you always need in your studio?
Yeah, I always need my laptop because it has my image database in it. So without that large collection of images, I don't really have any reference to paint with. So yeah, it's that I like to say like, oh, technology is bad, but I need it. Like I can't survive as an artist without it now.
Yeah, I think most of us, especially during COVID, feel that.
Basically.
But are there any certain like specific images or anything that you keep around for inspiration besides your very hefty computer file?
Yeah, I keep a lot of like art books and around, and I have like my very thick Neo Rauch book that I always look at. Wait, hold on. Like, can we see that? I don't know. The lighting's not that good, but I always have that. I also have plenty of different art books that I sit down with and sort of just get at. And in the middle of a studio session, if I get tired, I'll just sit on the floor and I'll just look at them. Yep.
Yeah. So because you have all this reference, do you sketch and prepare beforehand?
Yeah, I used to sketch quite a lot. I actually have like like a lot of sketchbooks that I have here. So basically, I was a very avid sketcher. With these paintings, however, I found that one of the goals of the work was to see how quickly can I think in a painting without having to sketch prior. So for these paintings, there was very little sketching done for them.
Interesting. So do you have like a particular ritual that you have in your studio, like before or during?
Yeah, some studio sessions, I'll start them with just sitting down in front of the painting and just looking at them. And that's one thing I learned from the Pennsylvania Academy, that, looking at your artwork is about like 40% of the work. So I'll grab a chair and I'll sit in front of it and I'll just look at it, and I'll go from corner to corner and I'll look at it completely. I'll look at it at some very small parts of it. I will I'll do that not just to make better decisions while I paint, but to also allow myself to like enter, quote unquote, like the painting and become like more intimately familiar with it, like its setting, the event it's depicting, etc., so that I have a feeling of what I'm painting.
So what do you listen to while working?
Yeah, when I was doing more classical work, that required patience, or I would spend like an hour rendering one part of it. I'd listen to like history lectures and podcasts about like religious studies and psychedelics, and or political podcasts or stuff or something like that. And I think those helped me develop an interest in the kind of art that I'm doing right now. But now that I paint more abstractly and I need to be more, present in the actual making of the work, because the canvas changes minute to minute. Um, I listen to music almost exclusively, and now that my painting uh, needs that kind of energy, I think that mainly jazz and experimental electronic music is what like keeps me going, basically. Yeah, more fast paced.
Do you have any albums that you suggest?
Um, there there is this album called Snakes and Birds by this artist called Deca, Deca, that I've been listening to a lot. Uh, a lot of like a lot of really fast lyrics, a lot of jazz in the album as well, a lot of samples from really old text. So the album does feel like what one of my paintings would sound like to me. And yeah, I mean he's a great rapper. He's a great music producer, and yeah, he's been a main. Uh, he's got like top one or top two in my list.
Awesome. Okay, what do we have next? How has your practice changed during COVID?
Yeah, it's like it got worse at first, and then it like got pretty ideal. I don't know like what the case is for other artists, because some artists have been like, oh god, like the school closed down the studios, I don't know where to go. So I'm not gonna say like this is like a universal experience, but in my experience, like I had a studio in West Chicago that I would take the metro train to. And after COVID became a pandemic, it just felt really dumb to go on the metro, like, on a almost daily basis to work on my stuff. So that sort of stopped being an option. So then what happened is that I turned my dining room into a studio, and I brought all my materials here. And all of a sudden, what I found is that now I sort of became more productive, because I had the very good fortune and privilege of having my studio be where I live.
Mhm.
So I literally can just feel like, I feel like painting today, and I'll have it right there, and I won't have to ride a metro to the other end of the city. So that's been how it's changed. I think it's brought me closer to the artist, to the art that I'm making, by mere virtue of just having it be a quarantine, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is one material that you haven't worked with that you would like to?
Yeah, I like to paint on plywood
Mm.
rather than canvas. I've actually been looking into more industrial materials. Sort of like seeing like industrial grade linseed oil rather than the um, art fine art grade cold pressed one that we have at Blick. In one of the paintings actually in here, I did try the Rose Wiley technique, where I cut part of a canvas
Mhm.
and I was trying to glue it to the painting, and I found that maybe some industrial grade super glue would work, and I did, and it worked, and I like that. So I like to use more of that actually. So yeah, definitely like more industrial materials for sure.
Yeah, almost like being less precious with things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Franz Klein painted with like basically like house paint, so that's kind of cool. Yeah.
I mean, that'd be interesting to see what would happen, since
Yeah.
especially your spaces are getting so like matte.
Mm-hmm.
So besides who you listed, do you have any artists that you're looking at right now?
Yes, I do. Like I always go like on artsy.net and see like what's up, what's hot, what's not, and basically I have this artist. Her name is like Mama Anderson from Sweden, and I like her because she actually uses the same image saving process that I do. Except hers is analog, so she basically has a whole library full of books rather than a file on her computer. And Mark Rothko from the American Expressionists, Michael Bormans from Denmark, which I would consider sort of like a more angsty or neo Rauch. Um, Jenny Saville from the UK. She was one of the first painters that I really began to like. Cy Twombly from the American Expressionists. Antonio Lopez Garcia from Spain, and Kara Walker from the United States with her cutout drawings.
Yeah. No, I definitely see like that kind of influence with your figures. Okay. So is there a specific time period or art movement that you are influenced by more than any other?
At first, it was like the European Baroque period of the 1600s, but now it's definitely become sort of like the socialist realism of the Soviet Union, as well as pop art in the United States, are like these completely opposite styles. One being the exemplification of labor in society, and then the other one being the epitome of consumerism, and also the clash of those two in the 90s, when the East German painters sort of began to go to America and Europe and see these things meld into one thing.
Yeah.
I also like the American Expressionists to some degree, and to another degree, like some of them, I don't like to call them this, but the naive painters of like the late 19th century that weren't taught art, but they taught themselves. I like those as well. So yeah, those are some that I've been looking at.
Okay. So of your work, which pieces are you most proud of and why?
It was actually the one with the woman and the map and the board of dots. It's called Aga. I like that one the most because it feels like it really aims at what I wanted to get at. It's the perfect degree of simplicity and complexity. I like the color scheme of it, and I like that unlike the other figures in my paintings, she actually looks engaged in what she's doing. Which I have felt that it's actually a harder thing to achieve. I feel like the other figures in my paintings, they do feel like it's a figure slapped on a background, like this guy here.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that's bad, but I do like that she actually looks engaged in what she's doing, which is a big victory for me.
Yeah, grounds in space.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, are there pieces that you don't want anyone to ever see?
Yeah, this is not from the from this show, but back in community college, I used to do a lot of self-portraits, and like they were just those like angsty self-portraits where I would look like that, like really like mysterious looking and like that, and I would like draw myself as like a 1920s gangster or some stuff like that, and then like we had a crit at some point, and they all were like, Gabriel, you've only done self-portraits for 2 semesters, and I'm like, oh, and I no one's gonna see those ever. Those will never be seen.
Well, there's only up. You're doing a great job now. So.
Thanks.
So who's someone who has helped you on your artistic path?
Like my friends and family. I mean, my mom, who allowed me to basically wreck the dining room to create the paintings that I made for the show. My partner, who has helped me like rehearse all my artist statements and review all the applications that I have sent to every show that I have applied to. My one of my bosses from here that actually let me use the studio in West Chicago for free of charge. So a lot of friends and family and close relations that have made what I am doing right now possible, and without them, this show would not have happened. So I mean, any artist that tells you that they didn't rely on their friends and family, that either they were like heavily under supported and were in a very bad position with their in their lives, or they're just not telling the truth. Most artists that make it have had a lot of help from their close friends and family. So that would be it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. So our second to last, how do you feel activism comes into art making?
Yeah, this is a bit of a long answer, but I mean, it's like so hard to have like meaningful activism today, because it at some point when it gains momentum, when activism begins to get public support and all that, um, like what happened was that um, these things get co-opted by um, you know, sorry, these things get co-opted by corporate interest and corporate
Mhm.
aesthetics. So you'll see, for example, BLM that started as a movement to stop the brutalizing of Black Americans by the police. All of a sudden, you would see that being portrayed by Coca-Cola or
Mhm.
like by video game companies or all that stuff, and it sort of takes away from the edge of the movement. And every time, and it happens every time. And I feel like the system itself seems to feed on our efforts to create genuine community building, genuine interactions, or a genuine aesthetic for ourselves. And I think like the role of the artist, or the role of anybody to make art, right, is to be able to see outside of it. Once you're painting in your studio, once you are engaging with art that is not like corporate art, like you're not doing, for example, like a painting of like a Star Wars helmet, or you're not doing. I'm not saying it's bad, but once you're stepping out of it, you're doing genuine self-expression. Um, what's happening is that you're momentarily enter this magical moment where the rest of the systems that would influence you, they don't influence you. So you create something, or you're in a space where you are free from the the manacles that chain us. So even if it's just mentally, uh, and that allows you to then go to the world and see where that like that fakeness is. So
Yeah.
I think like the world of, like, can you see me? Uh-oh.
Yeah. Just a little bit frozen, but we can hear you.
I think we have some technical difficulties.
Okay. Can you just turn off your, okay, you're back.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Where did I leave off?
Um, back on like corporate America and investing yourself into self-expression.
Yeah, yeah. So once you do that, you sort of begin to get like more acquainted with like what's genuine and what's not. And I encourage everybody to do some kind of art, even if you're not going to show it, even if you're not going to do it. Express yourself. Like write on your journal, write a book on your journal, write poems, create different languages, draw, collage, do something that helps you understand what it is to be outside of the system, because we need that right now so we can know what a genuine movement looks like, and what is not, what is actually being pushed into you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
And our last one, on a more hopeful note, how do you see your practice developing and what are your current aspirations?
Yeah, so my current aspirations right now is I mean, right now I'm moving back to Maryland, and that's like like what I'm dealing with right now. That is like my aspiration, move back successfully. But also, my aspiration is to just uh, go back and take a look at my work and see how it will evolve. I'm obviously seeing my work become more industrial in material uh, um, um, usage, and also more um, you know, just I want to see if I can bring some form of classical drawing back into it now that I've experienced the openness of just being so improvisational and so free with it. So now that I've tasted that freedom, I want to see how I can organize it some more. Um, and yeah, I do see my work becoming also a little bit more three-dimensional. I want to see if I can get into sculpture or installation now that I see like that I'm open to working with plywood. If you work with plywood, you can then sort of use that plywood in some three-dimensional uh, um, um, form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Really play with space more.
Yeah, right now making it back to Maryland is my own aspiration. Right now, like the game is surviving.
So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, setting up a studio there.
Okay, so we have some questions that came in down the wire.
Yeah.
Um, so Can you expand on how you create your dream realms?
How I create my dream realms. My dream realms are like not. I don't form them. That when you dream, the dream forms itself in front of you. You know. So I tend to let the painting dictate what it's going to become, and it's guiding me where it's going, and sort of you have to let go and sort of allow that to be here. So when they tell you, for example, there's the old saying that the artist is not an artist, the artist is the medium. That's when they say like
Yeah.
the sort of like the platonic realm of the metaphysical realm out there is entering your brain, and then it's telling you what to do, and you're not really creating anything, you're remembering something that's out there in the ether.
Okay.
So that's the way I see it. As I'm not really making the I'm not really making this is presenting itself to me, and I just decide to paint it basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting take on it.
That's a very interesting question.
Yeah. So can you tell us about how moving to the large format canvases has changed your artistic expression?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because before I was painting, I mean, I was doing like rather small work,
The drawings.
Yeah, the drawings, and then even the drawing with the babies and the man, that's not even that big. That's about like a little bit like up to here, like that way. Even then, that was kind of small. I have found that when I'm painting large scale, all of a sudden I get a lot more bravado. I don't know if this is like some like toxic masculinity coming thing, but it's like when it's a big thing, I'm like, I got a big brush and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna cover the whole thing with it. So I feel like facing a bigger canvas gives me saying like I can make as many mistakes here as I want, and I have all the space I can to just make it happen. And it's helped a lot, and I hope I can keep doing like large format only, because it's been a game changer.
Yeah, definitely seems more freeing for you to just explore.
Yeah.
Okay. So your pieces are pretty large. Do you feel that the size is important to make your statement?
Yes, there's actually something, a term that I used in PAFA, that we used in the sort of like how much of the surrounding space does the painting suck into itself when it's in display. So when you see the painting, like right now, I'm obviously, this is like behind me, is the background, but it's not the way you should see it. You would see it on a white wall. So the thing is, how much of that white wall is the painting sucking into itself, so that it has kind of like a presence or volume, right? And I have found that, coming from like the American painting school, and it started like in the 1700s with colonists here. The genre of historical painting, you would see paintings that are actually like 4 times the size of this, right?
Yeah.
And you would see that, and it would create such a big volume of visual information coming towards you that at some point it was almost unbearable. You go to museums and you physically get tired from looking at that. So I feel like it's not just about the size, it's about everything in it, the composition and all that. But I feel like larger paintings have that effect of having a really loud volume in the room, and sucking in the room into themselves, basically. I hope that made sense. I hope I didn't really just make it more abstract for
the I think most of us who have experienced art in person, and this is what I can't wait till we can see art in person again, so we can get that feeling.
I would definitely, I mean, just look, I would just give this exercise to people. If you're going to a museum, right? You go to the National Gallery, or you go to the MoMA, or wherever. Look at a little painting first, and then see how it affects the space around it, how you're looking at the thing as a whole, like the painting and the room, and then see how you compare that to when you go to a room and there's just a big painting in it. If you're able to see a Mark Rothko, you will see what I mean, because Mark Rothko, with his scale, you'll see that it actually sucks you in along with the rest of the room. You see? Yeah, that's it.
People always say that about Rothko.
Yeah.
So how does your experience with like actual work influence the ideas about work found in your paintings?
Yeah, actually, we were talking about it's like you know, I work at a fast food joint right now, and I basically like grill chicken for a living. And it's hard work, man. It's hard work, being like an essential worker, uh, and all that. And I think that sort of comes subconsciously when we go to like um, the slideshow and you see the painting where there's like the big guy that's also like a building, and it's like and then there's a blue guy with like a little host. It's like spraying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is sort of like puts my idea of like just like, man, like you're in this world and you're just like existing, and that's already taxing enough, you know and all of a sudden you have this like giant thing obstructing you from actually even like subsisting, because you now have to work out of desperation, and that to me, I mean, I made that painting when I was like just starting to like get into in the position I am now of like grill cook. um and and yeah, I think that definitely my personal experiences with just like having to be deeply involved with a task that you might not even like to do,
Mm-hmm.
you know a task that the people that are consuming what you are making, they don't really even know what the work that goes into the stuff, and that sort of goes with this idea that I want to make my workers mysterious, in the sense that you don't really know what they're doing. Like, if you guys have not worked in the food industry, one exercise would be like go to like the line at Chipotle and look at the grill and try to understand like what they're doing, and like what they're doing with the recipes, or what they're doing with the steps in cooking, and see if you can understand it, not just to like have a better understanding of the product that you consume, but just to understand that the worker has such a different experience of the world than the consumer, basically.
Mm.
Yeah.
Bring like humanity back into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for this last question, maybe if you have like your presentation handy, you could bring the image back up, because it asks about talk more about AGAH.
Oh, okay. Aga. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, AGA. Okay. Yes. So she says, I'm so taken with the woman in the image, the sense of mastery that she conveys, which is at odds with the 50s ambiance. So if you want to talk a little bit more about that painting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go here. Can you see me now? Can you see the thing?
Yes.
So we have this one. Again, and this is like my favorite painting of all. Let's view, present. So here we go. I mean, um, first of all, it seems like she's ambidextrous,
Mm-hmm.
She's holding two pencils. Um, and she's also, this map, the question is it like a map that's actually there, or is she projecting it through her head? Like, is this actually just her imagination as she's plotting points on a graph? I like this because in the end, this is like intellectual labor, and then for me, it feels like she's not just doing manual labor. She's actually engaging in what could be, she could be like plotting where iron ores are in a mountain range, or she could be, um, detecting, possible campsites, of enemy soldiers in a war. She could be a war worker or something like that, or she could be a civil servant, seeing where they're going to add new roads, and the little dots represent all this stuff. And to me, the idea that this is like I don't know, like an intellectual labor that I don't really know what it is, but she's really comfortable in it, and she's very masterful at it, and she seems like she has very good usage of it. Almost as if she's playing a game, really. Like, actually, it's a board game, and this is like her version of Sudoku, and then she's just actually, it's just a Sunday afternoon for her. So yeah, I think this is why this is so strong, because she you're sort of depicting in this painting like someone who is in complete mastery and in complete engagement with what she's doing. And what I hope to do in my later paintings is to repeat this, repeat that engagement of the figure with her work. I think this is the only painting in the series that was able to do that. I hope that answers the question.
Do you want to talk about like the letters, your use of letters in the work too?
Oh yeah, so like okay, so this is me being a Neo Rauch fanboy, but he's German, so he would like name his paintings on the painting. So he would put, for example, like the word bilden, on the painting, which means paintings. It means like actual just paintings. And I started learning German now, so I understand what the things are. But before I knew some German, those names would just be like, I don't know, like it could be anything. And I really like the idea that there is a word in the painting that signifies something that to me signifies nothing, So I like that. I like that feeling of conceptual tension.
Yeah.
So what I usually tend to do is like I'll write, if I write something on the canvas, it doesn't mean anything. It's a signifier that doesn't signify anything. But I'll tell you what I used to get to that point, because she's doing some form of intellectual work. And when you do something intellectual, at some point you go, aha, all right, well, how can I change that? Oh, just put a G instead of an H. So you go, aha, you go, aga, or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes it's so simple,
Yeah.
our concept. But yeah, I like the way that you're talking about it, because it's like there's purpose to it, but also complete nonsense to it, which goes with all of your figures at work. They're doing something, but are they really doing anything?
Yeah.
And that really brings us to the end of our talk. We don't have any other questions coming in unless you have something last minute, anything from our Facebook.
Actually, I mean, you did, when we were doing a little bit of a rehearsal, you did ask me about like what I felt about this paintings in relation to my Latin American heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you repeat actually that question? Because I think this is actually pretty good.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to bring it up.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Because you were born in like El Salvador, I was really interested because you're working with such an American school of painting and very like both Russian, German, and like American visual like languages. So do you want to talk more about like your relationship with that?
Yeah, because and the reason I really like this question is because it's so good, because it brings up another question. What's the difference between Latin America and the rest of these countries? Because in Latin America, we are people that speak European language, like Portuguese and Spanish. Most of us are either Catholic or we're irreligious. And the modern nations which were placed on these lands were founded on the ideals of the European Enlightenment. So Latin America is a Western part of the world. It's the global South in the sense that it is economically exploited, but culturally, religiously, like constitutionally, it is a Western land. And I find that juxtaposition of ideas really interesting. Our artists have always been in dialogue with European art and literature. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the famous Latin American writer, belongs right next to James Joyce in your collection of surrealist work. Latin America has had its own abstract expressionists, its own surrealists, and even its own socialist realists in the Zapatista movement in Mexico. And I don't actually think I am breaking with Latin American tradition at all. I am, like my fellow Latin American artists, very much part of the Western canon of art and literature. Even if the Europeans and North Americans somehow see us as something different because of the color of our skin mainly, or the fact that we're not wealthy nations, but we are as Western as any of them, in my opinion. This is something that I do ask myself quite a bit, like how do I identify as a Salvadorian artist? What makes me a Salvadorian artist here, not just an artist? And I find like that I like to define myself not as someone who is affected or influenced by Western art, but as rather someone who is actively changing it as you know, as I am given this point in history to do so. So my goal as both an artist and a thinker is not to be European, but be a better European than the colonizers themselves. If that's my drift.
Well, that's a great point for us to wrap up.
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation that we could do a whole nother
and I hope
on
globalism,
post-colonialism.
I do hope that Aerogramme Center, with its focus on Latin American artists, does continue to focus on this question of what is a Latin American artist in regards to like Western hegemony. It's a very good question, and I think you should keep asking it. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And we're very young, so we'll see what can come for both me and Zoe working with us and with our future artists that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have any words of wisdom before we close out?
Words of wisdom. Clean your palettes when you're done painting them. Clean your brushes, and you know, your music choice counts when you paint. Definitely. That would be my words of wisdom, straight from the man here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, this has been Gabriel Soto. Go on aerogramme.org to view his show, Realms of Potentiality. And after this discussion, he will be having a podcast conversation with our founder, Zoe, very soon. So that'll come out, and check all of our social media, and we'll be advertising that. And again, I'm Isabel Pardo. I'm the programs coordinator, and we hope to see you again soon for one of our next projects. We'll be closing off this live now, but thank you all for coming and for your great questions. All right. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Bye, everybody.